Okay. It is October 1st, 2003, approximately 8:20 a.m. My name is John Azzarello with the 9/11 Commission, and we're about to begin an interview in the New York Center in Ronkonkoma, New York, with David Bottiglia.
I'm Miles Kara, 911 Commission.
Brunelda Sanders Lane, Supervisory Attorney, FA, Eastern Region.
Julio Henriquez, Vice President, NACA, New York Center.
David Bottiglia, Air Traffic Controller.
Jeff Brown, 911 Commission.
David, if we could just sort of start off by you telling us a little bit about when you started with the FAA, how long ago, and what the various positions you held leading up to September 11th, and tell us what position you held on that day.
I started in April 1st of 1982 out in Oklahoma. When we came back here, I was originally assigned to Area G, which is now Area D. I was a full performance level controller at the time in Area G when I was moved to the oceanic sectors because they needed 2 radar controllers, and it just fit in with my seniority at the time that I was moved, one of 2 people that were moved to the oceanic. I was certified in all the North Atlantic sectors and sectors 66, 67, and 68 at the time. Then what happened was, I don't remember when we moved over to Area B, but I came over when we moved radar sectors to Area B, and that was 66, 67, and 68. And I've been in FPL in Area B for at least 10 years, I would say. Is it 10?
Yeah, no,
Oh.
FPL, just
full performance level controller.
okay. And so you think for approximately 10 years prior to September 11th, you were in Area B?
That is correct.
And you were in Area B on September 11th?
Yes, I was.
And were you assigned to a particular sector on September 11th?
There's no assigning sectors. What we do is, as you come back from a break, I just returned from a break. The next person to be relieved, I do not recall who it was at Sector 42, which is the sector that I was working at the time when this happened.
So if I understand correctly, then you're assigned to really an area and you rotate through various sectors in that area?
That is correct.
On a given shift?
Yes.
Okay. And how often do you take breaks, by the way?
It depends on staffing. It can be anywhere from sometimes over 2 hours to maybe every half hour.
Okay.
It can really vary depending on the day, the amount of traffic, the amount of sectors that are open, varying by the time of day or the hours.
Do you remember when your shift started that day on September 11th?
So 6:30 in the morning, maybe 6:45. I can't remember what time I signed in, but it was a 7 to 3 shift.
Okay, if we can sort of focus in on a time frame then on the 11th, say roughly sometime after 8 a.m. You're working sector 42.
Yes.
And is there a name for that sector?
Oh, it's in East Texas.
East Texas?
Yes.
Okay. And are you made aware at some point in time on the morning of September 11th, while you're at Sector 42, that there's some difficulty being encountered by an air traffic controller somewhere with regard to American Airlines Flight 11?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I was sitting in Sector 42, and Mark Merced was working at Sector 56, which is the Kennedy High sector. They're right next to each other. He stands up and walks over to me, and he says, can you put on your all limiteds? So I go to hit the button on the keypad, and nothing comes up, and he goes, no, you can't do it that way. He goes, you have to do it off the radar scope. They've since changed that.
What is all limiteds? What did you, I don't know what all limiteds is.
Well, not all limiteds, it's all primaries. When you're working a high altitude sector, Sector 42 happens to be a high altitude sector, you do not watch primary targets nor anything that's really below your strap, because you don't want a lot of things up there because they're not pertinent. If they don't have a transponder, they're not supposed to go above a certain altitude. And basically, when you're working what we call PCA, which is positive control airspace, which is 18,000 feet and above, they all have to have transponders unless they get a certain requirement that they don't have to use one, like it fails en route. So I didn't have that on in the sector.
So that's normal to filter out primaries to avoid clutter on your screen?
That's correct.
At the high altitude.
at the high altitudes, when most planes are required to transpond.
And both Sector 56 and 42 are both high altitude sectors.
I was looking at the map just so I can get the visual of the map behind us, and I see 56 and 42, high sector to the right of that map. That would be,
Well, actually, 42 extends almost over all of Sector 55 and 39. What happens is 56 is over there, and that goes all the way down to there.
okay, so 42 overlays 39 and 55
Yes.
at a higher altitude than 39 and 55?
Yes.
Okay, understand. So you're at 42, and Mark Musset is at 56, which is the adjacent sector as we look at the map to the right of Section 42, correct? Or it's east of 42, correct?
Yes.
Kennedy sector. What is the name of your sector, 42?
East Texas.
Okay. And how, if you can, for the record, what altitude does East Texas begin and end at?
At the northern sector portion, it's 25,000 feet and above until that line. And then we own 29,000 feet and above.
Okay, so where it overlaps 55 and 39, you own 29,000 feet and above.
Yes.
And then above Section 55, it's 24,000 and above?
Yeah, 25 and above.
25.
Oh, no, it's 24 and above.
This section.
Yeah, it's
Right.
24 and above.
The northernmost section is
Yes,
24.
the sector below us has 23 and below.
55 is the same as 39. This whole piece is 29 and above.
20, yeah, 29 and above is what we own.
Okay. So Mark comes over to you and tells you to put on your primaries?
All primaries.
All primaries. Okay.
Yes.
And did he tell you why he wanted you to put on all primaries?
Not at the time. I turn it on, and he points to a target on the scope, and he says, "This is American 11." He goes, "Boston Center thinks it's been hijacked." So, because I've worked in other areas, we don't do it in our area, but I've done it in Area G. I know how to start a track on a primary target, so I started an actual track on the primary using an American 11A or Alpha. The reason I put the A on the end was in case American 11 was actually a flight plan in our computer, and I didn't really want to look at the time. I just wanted to start a track on it. I just put the A on there just so that it wouldn't conflict with maybe somebody else having. Sometimes we get flights that two come out with the same call sign, and you actually have to put an A on the end until one drops out of the computer or whatever.
To distinguish the two.
Well, yeah. So I just started a track on it, and we were watching it. And
How do you start a track on it? Just
on a primary, what you do is you slew over the target. You hit pick on the trackball thing. You put in P.
P for primary, I assume?
Yeah. And what that does is it'll track a primary target and a space, and then American 11A.
And what kind of data does that give you, if any at all, when you?
Nothing.
Nothing. You don't get altitude, is that correct?
Not on a primary. Well, that's not necessarily true. If they've shut off, let's say, their altitude encoding ability, you won't get an altitude. If they shut off their transponder, you only get a primary target. And apparently they shut off both.
So when you shut off your transponder and you're tracking a primary, you don't get altitude, correct?
It depends. If they happen to have the altitude encoding on, it can sometimes show an altitude on and off. I did not see one when I tracked it.
It has nothing to do with the track, though, starting the track on the primary.
Who has the altitude encoding on?
If the airplane, they could actually lose the transponder but still have altitude encoding. It can happen sometimes where you can actually be tracking a target and altitude will come up periodically. That's a primary only. It usually does not happen if they shut off the whole thing.
And an altitude, just so I understand, if that happens and the altitude comes up periodically when the transponder's off, then it's something other than the transponder that's sending that altitude?
I believe so. I'm not real familiar with that, but I know that it can occur on occasion.
Has it ever occurred on your watch, so to speak?
It might have. Not at this particular time. I did not see an altitude.
Not on American 11 on September 11th. Okay. So you tag it as a primary, I think is the word you used? Okay. And what kind of data is in the data block, if any, at that point?
We just put it, we didn't really know an altitude. At the time, what I did was I asked a couple of airplanes if they could look off. I asked the one airplane at least. I'll look at my statement because I'll make sure of what I said.
mind, is that broad informational type stuff?
No, you can shed some light on something.
Yeah, well, just the transponder.
Julio,
yeah.
So that was talking.
Because there's this basic transponder and then there's a transponder with what they call mode C, output encoding capability. So normally, if you turn it off, that's different. But normally, when he's talking about we see the altitude, it's because one part is not working. The transponder part is not working, but the mode C part is still working.
Okay.
If they turn the whole thing off,
You're not going to get altitude.
Right.
Correct.
When we see it, it's because one part, just like the other way around, it happens as routine for the mode C to be off, not working or it's invalid.
So if it's left on but it's malfunctioning in part, then you may get
Yes.
an altitude reading. Okay, but that's not the situation on September 11th with American 11.
Right.
Okay.
What happened was I had an aircraft from J-75.
J-75?
Coming down in here.
Okay.
Now, the American was tracking down here, and I asked him to look off to the left. Or actually, originally I said if he had ever seen an American aircraft. And he told me, the U.S. Air 583 told me that the previous controller had asked him to look for it, and he thought the airplane was at flight level 290, which is 29,000 feet. And I said 29, he looked good, and he says yes. And then I said, could you please just... Then I told Mark at the time that it looks like 29,000 feet is good on the American. And then I asked the U.S. Air to look back again off his left to see if he could still see it. Now, it was 10 miles away approximately at the time. And it was a beautiful day. It's a very hard, 10 miles is a long way. These airplanes are big, but 10 miles is a long way to look. And he said he didn't see it, nor did he see him come up on the TCAS again. And what I said was it looked like they had turned off their transponder.
Could you explain what the TCAS is, if you know?
TCAS, do you have more information on it? I can tell you what it is. What does the TCAS stand for?
Traffic collision avoidance system. And
Normally, that's something that's in the cockpit that pilots have?
Okay. Basically to avoid a collision.
To avoid an air collision.
So normally they wouldn't have it set that far out. At 10 miles, they're not. I mean, it varies. As they get closer in the terminal environment, they'll set it a lot closer distance. But otherwise, it's probably not 10 miles. So he did say, I think the pilot, that he would look again, and that's probably what he meant, because he would change the range to go further out.
Range, to see if he would see this target, this American Airlines 11 on his TCAS screen.
Yes.
So, Dave, was that U.S. Air 583?
That's correct.
Okay, so you ask him to sort of do you a favor and see if he can get a visual point out of where this American is and find out approximately what altitude he thinks American 11 is flying at.
Yes.
And I think if I heard you correctly, you thought it was fairly, I'm sorry, did he see him actually?
No, he did not see him at that time. And then what ended up happening...
If I can just...
Oh, sure, go ahead.
See if we can assign a time for this. This is a transcript I'm showing you dated May 8, 2002, which appears to be from your sector position 42.
Yes.
And I guess at some point prior to today, over the last 2 years, you had an opportunity to look at this at some point?
No, I've never seen the
Oh, you
transcript.
never have?
No.
Oh, okay.
You listen to the Satori now.
Oh, yeah. I've listened to Satori. This makes me sound much better.
This is, I just want to, I'm trying to point down to the time Zulu 1240, which would be approximately 8:40 a.m. and 49 seconds, R42, that would be your position, right?
Yes.
And you're talking to the U.S. Air 583, correct?
Yeah, well, I don't remember exactly my words where he said, I guess these are it. And about 10 miles heading south, my last report out was 29, and nobody's not sure what might be going on. Yeah, we talked about him on the last ring and see this is exactly when this happened. We're not picking him up on the TCAS. I'll look again to see if we can spot him once more. So he looked on the TCAS. He also looked out the window and did not see anything. So then the United 7175 checks on and tells me that they heard the threatening transmission. But go ahead.
We'll pick up with that. After you talk to the U.S. Air and he doesn't spot the American Airlines 11, you say you make contact.
Well, the United 175 apparently had checked on the frequency a little earlier.
Okay.
He did not say anything at the time.
So
and I see you have the Tom Brokaw interview, but I learned some things when I was in on that made a little more sense at the time of why United said what they said to me, and I'll explain that. But what the United said after I've been speaking to the U.S. Air was that we figured we wait till you get on your center, and they heard suspicious transmissions like everyone stay in your seats. Now, I didn't understand what was going on. When I went in for the Brokaw interview, one of the things I was listening to the Boston Center controller tell us was that they had taken everybody off the one frequency because they wanted to just hear the American, except for one airplane, the United 175. He was on that one frequency the whole time.
He was on the same Boston frequency that was isolated for American 11?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that.
That's the first we hear.
That was something that came up when I heard them talking about it on there. And what happened was, when they shipped the United over, he came up on my frequency and he says, "We'd wait till your center," because he did not want to talk when the American was on.
So the United pilot didn't want the American 11 plane that was potentially being hijacked. If it were, what I'm hearing is that the United pilot probably didn't want the hijackers in American 11 to hear him telling one of the control centers that he overheard these threatening communications.
I'm surprised that didn't come. I don't know if you were up in Boston or not, but that was.
We were.
I heard that in the actual interview when the Boston Center controller was talking, and that made a lot more sense to me as to why he said that to me when he came on.
I mean, it was a thought that we had prior to meeting you, Dave, as to why would, if you had important information, you being the United pilot, why would you delay in relaying such important information?
Yeah,
now it's making a lot more sense.
Going over it at the time,
I don't know.
It was a guess that he wanted to confirm that the American was not also now on Dave's frequency. And once he heard him talk about it, he felt safe that the American was not on that.
But that made a lot more sense to me.
Makes more sense to us. Okay. Thank you for that clarification, because we didn't have that clarified until this interview with you. Okay.
Okay.
So he tells you that he overheard this transmission. And you understood him to be referring to American 11 when he said that?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us what happened.
I immediately called up Boston.
Did he tell you what he overheard, by the way?
What I have in my notes was it looked like everybody stay in your seats. That's what he said he heard. I don't know how much they were broadcasting. I did not hear any of those tapes.
The Boston tapes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I really have no idea what he was saying. So I immediately called up Boston on the line and relayed the message. And I also turned and told the supervisor that they had heard these.
And who was your supervisor?
At the time, it was Ivana. She was the CIC at the time.
Okay.
Now, what was going on, I was trying to relay as much information as I possibly could as these things were transpiring. I was talking to Mark and I was talking to Ivana. I was just trying to be very vocal about everything that was going on. So we were just talking about everything that was happening at this time.
And you're trying to pass the information along?
As much as whatever I was getting, I was trying to pass it on.
Okay.
Okay.
So you tell Boston about what the United 175 told you he overheard, and what action do you take next?
Well, at the time, all I did was pass on the information. There's nothing else I can do about it. But at the same time now, and this is one reason why, and I watched the Satori yesterday. 2 airplanes are reporting ELTs, and which is the emergency locator transponder. It usually has to be set off. You can set it off manually, but it usually is done through some type of a crash or some type of an impact.
But you can manually set it off?
Yes.
In the cockpit?
But 2 airplanes report an ELT. And the American was still flying. And he was still tracking at the time. That's why when the American disappeared, I did not think anything about him having hit the building. Matter of fact, during this period of time, as the ELT is going off, I noticed Mike McCormick's in the area standing next to me. And he's on the phone. And I'm not really sure who he was talking to. But at the same time, I was relaying now to Evanis, I'm talking to him also and telling him what's going on. And I figured he was up there because I figured maybe they notified him that there was now a hijacking going on. So I figured as a chief, he would be up in the area. That's what I would be. So I'm trying to relay this information. I'm saying that the ELTs are going off. And then the American disappears. And I just turned to Mark and I said, well, we know the American's not high altitude because we just lost the train. You know, our system is not really set up to do primary targets. We only see down so much because of our radar. So if they go down too low, we lose the primary targets. Sometimes we can see them on the water. You can see boats on the water sometimes.
And that varies on?
Yeah, it varies on weather conditions and stuff like that. It also varies by the ground conditions, buildings, anything like that.
So it's not a computer setting that puts a floor on your primaries?
A primary target basically is a
raw radar.
Return. So you get cluttered from buildings and stuff if you set it very low.
And so sometimes it can be, you can get it real low.
So we can follow that thought, Dave. You say you get at least one or two reports of an ELT in the area from other aircraft.
I get two.
2 reports of an ELT. Is it
Well,
in the area of where the American, those
well,
planes?
it's hard to say sometimes because you can hear ELTs for miles. The higher up you are, the further away you'll hear an ELT. It's just the way it works. It spreads out, and depending on who's listening to it.
Now, you say when you heard the reports of the ELTs, was it shortly after that the American 11 primary dropped off your screen?
Yes.
And I think you said, Dave, you didn't think at that point that it ran into a building.
Right. I did not.
What were you thinking had happened to it at that point?
I just figured they were flying low level.
Did you think it was trying to land somewhere? Or?
At the time, I had no idea. I really had no idea. It was right then, though, that I started getting reports from aircraft of what was going on in New York. It looked like the Trade Center was on fire.
Before we get to that, for a second, you thought it was flying at low level. You get a report from Boston prior to that, right, that they think it's been hijacked. Are you assuming at that point, when thinking that it's been hijacked, or are you thinking something?
No, I'm thinking it is hijacked.
Okay. Hijacked, flying at low level, headed southward.
Well, yeah, well, maybe I should go in some more. Maybe we missed some things here. Once we deemed that the airplane prior to this was at flight level 290, we attempted to try to get the altitude. So Mark Merced brought an Eagle flight, and I forget what altitude, right over top of the primary target to try to spot him. And as he's doing that, I'm trying to help him. I had another aircraft coming down that I had to end up turning pretty hard out of his way because these two were head-on. I think they were both at 31.
The Eagle and the other plane?
Yeah, and I don't remember which one it was. Oh, here it is.
Is it the Delta
2433. And then I called Kingston up to try to turn him, and I ended up turning the Delta to the right to get him away from him. He does not report, and he cannot see the airplane. That doesn't necessarily mean, you know...
The Eagle can. Okay.
At night, it's much, much easier to spot an airplane. I don't know if you've ever flown.
Yes.
But when you're sitting up in the cockpit and you're looking out on a really sunny day, if the sun's in your window or anything like that, you're looking for a target that's moving very fast. Both of you are closing at probably close to 1,000 knots. That's very fast. To try to spot one thing, even if you're passing, sometimes right, if he's a little bit off, you could be looking right here. It's hard. Those windows aren't that big. He could have missed it.
Sure.
But when he passed him right overhead of it, I pretty much thought he was not there any longer. And then when the target fell off, I said, no, he's not high altitude anymore. That was my feeling at the time, that he was low.
Okay. Understand. Now, let's...
Can I come back to the ELTs for a moment?
Yeah.
You heard 2 distinct ELTs?
I did not, but 2 airplanes reported it.
They reported they heard it.
Actually, US Air 583 and also Delta 2433 both reported hearing an ELT.
Now that the hearing of that ELT can't be associated with any plane.
It was prior to the American was still flying.
Right.
So when the two ELTs went, two of them reported it. I reported the supervisor, but that was why I'll get into it, when I was originally informed that it was a small airplane that flew into the Trade Center. That's all I thought.
Let me just show you the time, just so we can get a little reference.
Sure.
The transcript again of the communications from your sector that day. 8:44 a.m. and 4 seconds. USA 583. Yeah, I just picked up an ELT on 121.5. It was brief, but it went off.
Right.
And then R42, this is you responding, right, immediately. Okay, they said it's confirmed. Believe it or not, as a thing we're not sure yet, but so we're still going on another aircraft right now, and they're trying to see what the altitude he's at, meaning the American 11, right?
Right.
Okay, so we now know, or do you agree that we now know, I guess, that the impact in the Trade Center occurred approximately 2 minutes after?
It was like 2 minutes after that. That's why even when the American disappeared, I did not associate that with the impact of the Trade Center. And
Here's the Delta. I just wanted to show you the Delta. That's about a minute later. 8:45 and 7 seconds. Delta Airlines 2433. We picked up. It says Delta 2433 at 290. Now that means the Delta was at 29,000 feet,
right?
Right? We picked up that ELT too, but it's very faint. And that's approximately a minute before the impact of the North Tower, correct?
Right.
Okay. Just wondering if you had any thoughts, not then, but now in hindsight, as to whether or not you think that was an ELT that, knowing what you know now, that the American did crash into the North Tower, do you think, based on your experience, that was probably an ELT they were picking up, or is it too hard to determine?
It's too hard to determine.
How accurate is the time? I mean, it's set at 46, right, the impact? I mean,
The impact is set. We've got
The impact is set.
Absolutely.
8:46 and
8:46. The NTSB has established impact time at 8:46:40.
Not only that, but the target was still there.
The ELT can only go off with the impact.
Can be activated by somebody in the car.
We've got a little confusing, some conflicting information on that.
They can test it.
Some people say they could be set off only on impact, not manually by the pilot, but I think Dave, you said...
Yes, it can be done manually by the pilot. That's what I was going to, when you were questioning, as far as why it would go off, like, it happens routinely, we'll get ELTs, and I guess 9 out of 10 times it's a little plane on an airport that's playing around and testing it or repairing it. Plus, they're allowed to test it 5 minutes before to 5 minutes after the hour, every hour. Basically, so that's the first thing you get an ELT report, you look at the time, and we disregard the ones 5 minutes before or 5 after, unless
Do you ever get one if a plane has a hard landing? Does that ever set it off? If it has a real rough landing?
I don't know. Somebody said that, and this was just rumor and conjecture. I don't know if this is true or not. I just happened to hear this, that somebody said if you're doing really hard turns, like the way these airplanes may have been being handled, it may have set off the ELT. I do not know.
So that's something we would address to a tech person who's
Yes.
familiar with ELTs. Okay.
But just to clarify, so yes, it could have been manually been set off before the impact.
Okay.
That's not my point. You can't say that came from a particular plane. It's
No.
just out there.
There's no scientific way to link that ELT.
Now, what we do is we try to get multiple reports and narrow down who's not getting it, who's getting it, and try and get closer and closer.
Fair enough.
Normally, and this is just something, they'll get reports. There's satellites in the air that actually zone in on ELTs, and they'll come around periodically and ask us, would you check for an ELT in the vicinity of Kennedy? Would you check for an ELT in this? Both us and I believe the Russians monitor ELTs. I don't know who else does, but it's just these satellites monitor the ELTs because it's worldwide.
Right. It's an worldwide emergency.
Yes.
Now let me take you back to
Okay.
this time frame around just before impact, just prior to 8:46. You've made some attempts to get other aircraft in the area to fly in the vicinity of American 11 to give you a visual on it.
Actually marked it.
You marked it on your screen.
No, Mark Merced
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, Mark.
passed actually the Eagle flight right over the target.
So there are attempts by at least one of your colleagues to fly other aircraft in the vicinity of American 11 to get a visual approximation of American 11's altitude.
Yes.
But so far we haven't gotten a reply that someone has seen them in the air.
No visual
report.
report.
You get a report from two aircraft that they hear in the LT.
Yes.
You don't know yet, obviously, about any fire or smoke by the Trade Center because the impact hasn't occurred yet.
Right.
Okay. Now, if we could just stay with this time frame for a second, let me ask you, based on Boston saying that they think it's a hijack, do you have any understanding at that time, right around just before impact, as to whether or not military assistance has been summoned by somebody?
I know when I'm sitting at the sector, the only information I'm doing is I'm trying to relay what I have. They're not relaying other information back to me. I have no idea what else is happening. Okay, I do know Ivana. I told Ivana, and I know that she has run around the corner because she has told me that she has informed whoever it was at the time, and also now the chief is in the area. Prior to the impact of the American, he is actually in the area, standing right next to me. And I'm trying to talk to him at the same time.
And you have to come together at the same time.
Oh,
You have a lot going on.
Well, it is a lot. We're trying. We're really zooming in over here. We're trying to do as much as we can. One of the things as a controller that I do is that once I deem that an aircraft, when you accept the handle of everything, is not in conflict, it's not as imperative to keep looking at those. We were trying more to look at over here to get everything done. I'm looking at a conflict with the Eagle flight and the Delta that I have now. And only because we were still looking for the American.
Okay, let me ask you, before we move forward, from 8:45 a.m., there's two entries on the transcript at 8:45 and 37 seconds, and then at 8:45 and 44 seconds from Huntress. It says, heads up, New York, Amos, A-M-I-S, Huntress ID. And the second...
you want to know what that is?
Yeah, do you know what that is?
Yeah, Amos is in the ocean. Amos Huntress ID is Huntress monitors, actually the whole United States, but from my thing in the ocean, they're usually monitoring aircraft that are out over the water. Now what's happening is as aircraft starts coming in, New York tells them to squawk a code. Now what they're asking for as an ID is, normally Huntress is made aware of what codes and who's on them. Sometimes they may not get that information, or somebody's not coming up on a code, so they'll call up Huntress ID, and now they'll ask for who's approximately at 54 and 40, or certain positions that are out over the water. Who's there?
So they're not talking, Huntress is not talking to your position?
No, but we actually have a line. We'll hear them call. You hear them call all the time, Huntress ID.
And AMOS stands for?
You know what Amos actually stands for? I'd have to, if you give me a phone, I could call the Oceanic and...
That's the right. We'll track it down. It's a sidebar to this.
Okay. Now, Huntress, okay, so they're not talking to you. Okay. Now, what happens after, if you can bring yourself back to that time frame after you get the report of the two ELCs, what happens after that, dude?
Well, I noticed that R-56 was vectoring the Eagle flight at 31 northbound to look for the American. And then I told him, I said, watch my Delta 2433, because these two he had him on a pretty tight turn to try to get him over the American.
And by turning the Eagle, he put him in jeopardy with the Delta?
Well, we had a lot of room still. I mean, it wasn't to the point where it's like an imperative thing, like an emergency thing, but I called Kingston up and I asked him to turn the Delta. I didn't know how long he was going to have the Eagle flight on the heading. Other things are happening. It's not just one airplane. You're dealing with a lot of airplanes. It may not look that busy or anything like that, but a lot of stuff is happening at this time. So all I did was I turned the Delta west just to get him away. I didn't know what he was going to have to do with this, and he ended up turning the Eagle flight back up on course. So it ended up I got the Delta right back on course right after that.
And at some point after that, did you hear anything about smoke coming from that area?
Oh, yeah. Quite a few, at least a few. Right after that, an aircraft, I do not know who it is, on the frequency states that it looks like there's a major fire in Manhattan. It looks like the World Trade Center. Now, these airplanes are like 50, 60, 70 miles away, and they're seeing this. I asked the aircraft who gave the report, and I don't recall the thing who it was, but I believe it was Delta 1043.
You're not, are you thinking now when you hear about there's a fire in the World Trade Center, are you thinking at all about American 11 and whether or not
Well, right as this is going on, I'm also hearing a conversation from the facility chief. He's on the phone standing right next to me.
that's Mike McCormick?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's saying it looks like a small twin-engine aircraft hit the World Trade Center. Well,
Who's, this is Mike saying?
yes.
Okay.
And at the time, with the ELTs going off, I thought maybe he hit it. It has happened in the past. And I'm just thinking that somebody hit the World Trade Center.
You're thinking a smaller aircraft than American 11?
You know, it's interesting that when you look at the tapes on it, if you don't really know what an airplane looks like, those buildings are massive. They look small compared to those buildings. And it wasn't really until, if you just kind of looked up and saw an airplane go in, it's hard to tell sometimes unless you're really familiar with what the airplanes are. They saw two engines on it. Oh, okay, it's a small engine. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure somebody stated that they were listening to the news too, and they were reporting it as a small twin-engine airplane also that went in.
Do you remember, you say you heard Mike say this as he's on the phone standing next to you. Do you know who he was talking to?
No, I do not.
Let me see if I could find that other report that you just talked about. You think another aircraft, you're saying, came on your frequency and said that they were listening to a report about it being a smaller plane, right? I think I found it here. There's, I'll just show you for the record. It's around, there's an entry here in the transcript at 8:54 and 7 seconds from U.S. Air 583. It says, yeah, getting reports on over the radio of a commuter plane hitting the World Trade Center. Is that a Nordo 76 still in the air? Now, when U.S. Air 583 is saying, is the Nordo 76 still in the air, he's referring to American Airlines 11, right?
Yes.
So here now you have some other aircraft relaying to you that they hear some radio report that it's a commuter plane.
They sometimes listen to the radio, because a lot of times they'll ask us how the Yankees are doing. I'm just trying to give you some thing, and they have the ability to tune in.
The AM, FM?
Yes. Okay. No, I don't think it's FM, but I believe it's AM,
AM?
that they can tune into. So they must have tuned right away, because they're seeing the fire. That was a big fire. And I'm sure now they're all wondering. I was trying to also relay the information to the pilots to let them know what was going on, because whatever information I had, I was trying to give to everybody, the pilots, the supervisor, Mike, everything. As I got it, I relayed it, and I relayed it to everybody. It didn't matter who it was. I thought everybody should know. We have a hijacking, we have this. I didn't specifically say hijacking, but everybody's hearing this now on the frequency of threatening transmissions, this and that. So whoever was on my frequency kind of knows that something is going on. And I guess the one airplane that asked at the Delta, I think it was the Delta asked whether the 767 was still flying. They must have had it in the back of their minds that maybe this went into the Trade Center.
Yeah, actually it was the U.S. Air 583
Yeah.
that asked if he's still in the air.
To be honest with you, when somebody told me that the airplane had said that, I don't even recall him saying that until I've since listened to the tapes.
Saying this?
Because something was going on right at that time that I went and did.
Okay, let's come to that in a minute. Well, what is it? What is it that you would?
I'm thinking that it's the United 175 is in the coast track.
You think that occurred prior to this U.S. Air?
No, it was right around that time.
So let me see if I can at least find something in the transcript and see if I can help you out on this.
I'd have to watch it up there again. I mean, we watched it briefly. One time was enough for me to watch it, but if we have to watch it again, I understand you guys want to go up and ask me some questions about it. That's fine.
Let me see, well, let's see if we can sort of,
We might be able to do it without.
see if we can help you out without putting you through the tutorial again.
Oh, I don't mind. You know, you guys need to do your job. That's fine with me.
I appreciate that, Dave.
That's all right.
Dave, just to see if I can give you some time reference here. We've marked on the transcript here, well, it says 8:54 is when the U.S. Air asks you if the American 11 is still in the air, right? 8:54, according to this transcript, 8:54 and 7 seconds. Now, if we go a few minutes before that, it appears here there's an entry at 8:51
Okay.
and 43 seconds, R42, that's you speaking, correct?
Mm-hmm.
United 175, recycle your transponder and squawk code of 1470.
Right.
Does that refresh your recollection as to when you were trying to raise 175 on the right on its intended transponder code?
Oh, it must have been at 8:51, and I don't know when I was when I got the report from the thing. Certain things are going on. I was trying to do that. I was calling Kingston at the time. Right now, I don't think anything's wrong with the United, to be honest with you.
Well, let's follow through what happened
Okay.
with this. You call United 175 again, correct?
That's correct.
You call United 175 a third consecutive.
Sometimes they don't listen.
Do you read New York?
Sometimes they just don't listen, and you try them a few times, and then you get a little bit ticked at them because they're not. You got to listen up.
So, in other words, when they're not responding to you, that's referred to as Nordo, right? Or
Not
potential
necess-
Nordo.
No, I very rarely consider that a Nordo at the time. A lot of times, I mean, you'll call an airplane sometimes 5 times.
Before they respond.
They could be doing something in the cockpit. That my call is not as important as what they're doing. Just like when we're working, somebody could be calling you, you know, Kennedy Kingston on the 93 line, and you're trying to separate 2 airplanes. It's their phone call to me is not as important as perhaps separating these 2 aircraft, or you have to get something done before you answer their line. So at the time, maybe they just had something they were doing, and I really don't know. But I don't get worried about it the first couple of calls. Now I do a little bit.
But pre 9/11 years, it was not. What you're saying is it's not unusual. Was not unusual prior to 9/11 to try to raise a pilot on the radio and not have them respond
And
immediately.
it's also not unusual that sometimes the transponders change. You know, they hit it. They could be doing something. They hit the button. It changes. It can happen.
Okay. And now let's see if we can follow through your subsequent efforts here. That's at 8:52, and then immediately you raise Delta 1489, correct?
Just to make sure that my frequency is still working. Something might have happened. I mean, maybe I have to change the transmitter. It can happen. We can lose a transmitter. Something happens to it. Maybe my headset broke.
So you're checking whether or not you're not hearing back from United 175 because you have some sort of technical problem on your end.
That's correct.
And then you take another step, it appears here, at approximately 8:52 and 30 seconds. You're calling Kingston on the 93 line.
They're the ones that turned the airplane over to me originally. Sometimes what happens, it's only a little switch button in the cockpit. Normally when they change to one frequency to the other, what they'll do is they'll put in the new frequency and switch over to it. And the reason why they do that, some pilots write down all the frequencies. Others don't. It just depends on the airline, it depends on the pilot. And they have just a little toggle switch. So what may have happened is they hit it back, and they went back to Kingston. That has happened in the past.
There's 2 radios.
So now you're checking back to the sector it came from when prior to entering your sector to see if you forgot if you.
Well, maybe he hit the button, and now he's back on their frequency. These things happen. The people will call you, will turn an airplane over, and the guy will say, you know, I was talking to this airplane. See if he went back to you, and you'll call and go, yeah, go ahead, New York. And
they'll do that on purpose also. When they have the 2 radios, when they get a new frequency, they put it on the other one. They leave the old frequency in. If anything goes wrong, they go back to the old one.
Okay.
Right.
Now you get a reply. It appears from Kingston section up in Boston.
Well, what happens is I asked him, do me a favor, see if 175 went back on your frequency. He goes, United 175. Now, he doesn't have any information there. I believe that's a different controller now than had been the one who was working these.
Okay, and then is this the reply down at the bottom of the page here, page 13?
Yes.
853 and 14 seconds, it says he is not here, East Texas.
Yes.
So that's Boston, Kingston sector telling you that he's not on our frequency.
Yes.
At 853 and 14 seconds.
Now, I am a little concerned because now I see a change of altitude with a code change on this United. And I asked him if he might have seen that United 175. Maybe I'm missing a target. Sometimes things can happen. And I said, do you happen to see anything? And then I told him about the code.
Who are you talking to here?
I'm talking to Sector 10. Now, Sector 10 is the sector that I would hand off to on United 175. United 175 was coming down J80, just like here. His next thing would be coming to Sector 10.
Okay.
Matter of fact, if you notice on the Satori, as soon as I get him, I start flashing to Sector 10. So we have a lot of stuff going on. I don't want to not make a handoff. So what I do is, as soon as I get him, I'm talking to him, I flash him right on to Sector 10. To me, he's already done. I'm just going to wait until 10 takes the handoff to ship him on over. But when things are happening like a hijacking or anything that's out of the ordinary, you try to take the duties that you can do right away and take care of them so it's not something that you forget about. So I'm flashing him right away to Sector 10.
And you're telling Sector 10 that there's a 3321 code. That's a transponder code, right?
Yeah.
And that's on, that was not the original code of United 175, correct?
No, as a matter of fact, when the code changed like that and I saw him climbing, I got scared. I didn't know what was going on. At the time, I really didn't know. But something scared me then. I actually got scared. And I'm watching this guy, now I'm talking to 10, and I'm saying, do you see this United 175? I see this target climbing. It's on a different code. And I guess you hear in my voice, I got scared. I'm thinking one hijack. I still wasn't thinking hijack, but now I am.
You're thinking one hijack, meaning American 11 already.
And then as soon as I saw this, and now I'm thinking, I think we might have another hijack. It just... Somebody asked me one time, why was I so quickly? When I was hearing all the reports, everything that was going on, the Trade Center's now on fire. Even though at the time I'm still not thinking it's American 11, I'm going, something's going on today. We have the Trade Center hit. The American 11 gets thing. Now all of a sudden this thing is going off, and I just thought this was hijacked.
Let me ask you a question about that. You say he's climbing this code 3321.
Yes.
3321 code is at 35,000 feet climbing. Don't know who he is, but you're concerned about the U.S. Air 583.
Yes.
Now, so you're not, is it fair to say then you're not certain yet that this code 3321 is actually U.S. Air?
United.
I'm sorry, United Airlines 170.
No, as a matter of fact, I wasn't sure who he was at the time.
Okay. You say we may have a hijack also in that same conversation with RA-10. Which are you referring to, the American 11 there?
No, I'm thinking the United at that time.
Okay. So you're saying we may have an additional hijack?
He didn't know about the first one.
Okay.
And it was right at this time I turned to the facility chief and I said to him, I think I just lost United 175.
You tell Mike McCormick this.
And he goes right on the thing, he says, I think we have multiple things going on here right now. And I can remember vividly hearing him say that. Who he was talking to, I don't know. He was on the phone maybe with the command center, but he was on the phone with somebody right there, and I heard him say that. But right away I just said, I think I lost United 175.
Okay.
What is on your scope at this time? And you said you're not sure who he was. What do you have visually that informed you about 175 in its previous block and the new 3321?
The only thing I have is now a data block that's in the coast track. What happens is when they go off the right code, the data block goes into a closed track. Or it can sometimes still track with it for a while. And that's why I may or may not have seen it right away. But I believe the target was coming away from it now. And that's when I started to ask United. I even think he might have even stayed on course for a little bit. And then I noticed that he was climbing and making the turn. And that's when I got a little worried about it.
You noticed that
More
from
than
the coast track or from the 3321?
Well, actually from the coast track, because the track can sometimes stay with it. Sometimes it doesn't go right off the target, even though they change their code sometimes. Sometimes the track, because we use, you'd have to go to the technical things, but even if the target goes into a track, sometimes the data block will stay with it because that's what it's supposed to do originally.
Projecting what it did before.
And it will move along, and sometimes it'll jump off, especially if somebody else squawks that same code, and this one's no longer on it. It's just the way the computer does it. But it will stay with it for a while.
But at some point there's a separation.
Yes.
When
Go ahead.
when it goes into coast, what information on the coast track for United 175 would you have seen that day?
Well, it just comes up as saying coast. I might have lost the altitude on it. I don't really recall what I lost or anything like that, but
But the call
I
sign
did.
UAL 175 stays.
Stays up there. Yes.
And where's that? Where's the data block coast towards? Does it coast towards the track that United 175 is projected to have gone on?
It can for a little while.
Yeah,
It usually
starts
doesn't.
That way. When he says separates, that's when it would get your attention. It's kind of hard to
What?
explain.
When I watched yesterday the Satori, one of the things I did, because I was wondering why I didn't notice it earlier, was I was flashing the handoff to Sector 10. That's the same thing that shows 10 coming up on the scope as where it would say coast.
I'm sorry, you said. Could you repeat that?
That's what I was going to show, actually, because if you can visualize it, the target's here, the little data block. Now, when he flashes into 10 early, because there's basically nothing else he's going to do with this guy. He can take care of everything else. Eventually, down here, he's going to just turn the guy over, so there's nothing.
So if I can ask Dave something.
Okay.
So when you flash it to 10, prior to the transponder code being changed,
Yes.
you flash it to 10. Is it your intent at that time, and is it at that point in time that you don't have any need to speak with United 175 again between that time and the time when he enters?
Yes.
the-
There was no traffic between him going on J80. No, nothing. As far as I'm concerned, he checked in. Everything's done. There's no conflict with him. I did what I have to do with him. I just flashed it right away to Sector 10. Because now I don't want to be worried about me looking up and all of a sudden he's in Sector 10's airspace with no handoff.
Who was
Big-
Sector 10, I think?
I know Jimmy Brennan was on the H, and I think Mike Fettley, she might have been on the R. But,
So what?
I know Jimmy Brennan was on the H because I recognized his voice when we talked. Because he used to go, "Hi, Jack." And I think you heard that. I'm not sure if you heard that because they were all kind of shocked when I said, "Hi, Jack."
So now, so we clarify this on the interview here. What then was the first thing that drew your attention to United 175 when you first noticed that change of transponder? What caused you to notice that?
I think as I was scanning the scope, we just finished moving the delta around. I finished a couple other things as I looked over because you try to keep scanning the scope, but when your attention's really focused on one thing, like looking for the American, it takes your attention from scanning on the other side. And so I wasn't really looking at that portion of the scope constantly. Normally, you're looking around the whole scope constantly, especially for conflicts and anything like this. But at the time, we had a lot of imperative things going on near Kennedy, not 50, 60, 70 miles away.
So you had a situation with American 11, which was the eastern part of your sector.
Right.
And this United 175 is the westernmost part of your sector.
Yes.
And he's got a clear path when you last
Oh,
looked
yeah.
at him to go all the way to Sector 10.
Yeah.
And you tried to you asked United 175 at around 8:51. We saw in the transcript to recycle its transponder.
But I don't know what time he actually switched. I'm sure they have that in the thing, but
It's in the Satori, and I guess you have to accept the representation from us, but we can tell you that we think, I'm looking at the Satori, I think it was around 8:46.
Yeah, it's like a plus sign.
No, the change of the transponder.
There were two changes. I'll let you pick that up.
yes, I was told about that. At the position, I did not.
You did not.
I have 84646 on the change.
But at some point, you become well aware of code 3321.
Mm-hmm.
So 8:46 and change is when United 175 apparently, according to the Satori, first changed its transponder code, and approximately 5 minutes later, you're asking them to recycle to a code of 1470.
Right. But it was still on course. Not that it was anything at that point. He was still on course. It was right after that, I believe, he started to climb. Or maybe that's when I noticed he was climbing. I really don't know.
Dave, if we can, I want to get into a little more into the detail on 175, but before we do that, I sort of want to go back to American 11, and I know it's hard to separate the two because they were both going on simultaneously.
That's fine.
But I want to see if I can go back to American 11 for a moment. I want to bring you to the point in time after 8:50, give or take a few minutes, where at that time you don't have American 11's primary target on your scope anymore, correct?
Right.
And at that time, shortly after 8:50, you hear from other aircraft in the area that there's a fire in the Trade Center, correct?
Yes.
And I think you previously stated that at that moment you're not thinking that American 11 crashed into the World Trade Center, right?
That's right.
In fact, you were hearing from Mike McCormick, who's standing next to you, something about a small aircraft or a twin engine that may have hit the Trade Center.
Small aircraft, he said. And I heard him say something like it looks like an aircraft off of Poughkeepsie might have crashed into.
An aircraft off of Poughkeepsie, meaning departing Poughkeepsie? Okay. Now,
how they knew that, or he was talking about, I don't know.
so you weren't privy to his conversation?
Just from what he was talking about, we were trying to do a little bit of verbal. I was trying to inform him of anything that was going on in my sector at the time, and Havana at the same time. I was being very vocal. I told them everything. Looks like there's a fire. Looks like it's this. As I got transmissions, I relayed it to them immediately.
And the U.S. Air is also reporting to you on your frequency that he heard some radio report of a commuter plane hitting the Trade Center.
Yes.
At that point in time, if you could take yourself back to September 11th, where, if at all, are you thinking that American 11 may be at that point?
South of the city.
So you think it has passed the city,
Yeah.
south of it, at a low or high altitude? Do you have any idea?
Probably, I was thinking low altitude, but I really have no idea. But in my mind, I was thinking low altitude that they were flying. Maybe to avoid radar or whatever. Who knows what they were thinking.
And you believed it was hijacked also at that point, is that fair to say? Okay. Did you have any thoughts, if at all? I mean, because there was a lot going on, but did you have any thoughts of where they may be headed then if they were low altitude to avoid radar?
So you ever hear me in there? My initial thing was I thought they were heading for Cuba. I've been here for so many years that years ago when there's been a few hijacks since I've been here. One, a guy hijacked an airplane to Atlantic City. You remember that?
You wanted to go lose his money?
I don't know. I don't know if you remember that, but he actually hijacked the airplane and landed in Atlantic City. But they always went south into the Caribbean, like Cuba or something like that, and they would land. Fortunately, now with our things, they don't do that usually anymore, but you never know. So I'm still going back to, we haven't had a hijack in years, that you figured that's where they were going.
Now, did there come a point later in that morning where you changed your opinion as to whether or not American Airlines 11 was still airborne and heading south at a low altitude?
I thought that, honestly, that was the airplane that went into the Pentagon.
Okay, you thought 11 had potentially hit the Pentagon.
Yeah.
So when did you first think, if you can recall, as best as you can, I know it's been 2 years, but at what point did you change your mind and say to yourself, you know what, I don't think American 11 is flying south at a low altitude anymore, I think it's crashed somewhere?
after the reports came out that it was the American that went in. I really still thought it was the commuter or the smaller airplane that actually had hit the Trade Center.
So you just said after the reports that the American went in where?
To the World Trade Center, that they actually confirmed that it was the American that went into the Trade Center. See, that wasn't, even initially, I don't think they knew that it was the American 11 that went into the Trade Center. They were still thinking it was a smaller airplane until, I don't even know, how much further after that did they decide it was the American that actually crashed into the Trade Center?
They're asking.
Julia, yeah.
I think they guessed, somewhat fairly quickly looking at it.
But,
I think that was.
So you're saying when you heard, you at some point later on heard somebody report then subsequently that they did think the American 11 hit the Trade Center.
Yes.
Did you hear that after the United Airlines 175 was determined to have crashed into the second tower?
Yeah, it was after that.
So it was after 903. We now know that 903 was the point approximately of the second impact, right?
I was pretty sure at the time when the American descended down. There was a lot of talk in the area because now everybody was watching this target. And I know I'm moving ahead on this a little bit, but one of the comments was, my God, he's in the ground on the next hit because he was descending so quickly. And then somebody just yelled out, oh my God, that's the Trade Center right there.
This is the American 11?
No.
This is 175. Okay.
Yeah, 175.
Okay.
And that's...
Let's go back to the 11 to something you said there. You said at some point, I asked you, at what point did you change your mind and say, I don't think American 11 I don't think it's any longer flying south at a low level. I think it actually has crashed, and I think you said you thought it went into the Pentagon.
I thought that was the plane that went into the Pentagon when I heard the report.
But when you heard the report that
the Pentagon had been hit, yes.
And how did you hear that report?
From the news.
Where were you at that point when you heard the Pentagon was hit?
We could have been upstairs.
You weren't at your scope, though? Is that fair to say?
No, they removed us from the positions maybe 10 minutes after, 15 minutes after this occurred.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get a time frame reference because you said then at some point, though, when you heard confirmations of the American 11 hitting the Trade Center, then you realized that it was probably American 11. Was that after then you thought it was American 11 hit the Pentagon?
Yes, I was after that.
Sometime after the point of impact of the Pentagon, did you then start to think, oh, well, American 11 probably...
Well, not thinking. That was finally said. It was American 11 that hit the Trade Center.
Who said you didn't know?
Could have been on the news. I might have been home already. I don't recall when that information got to me, but it was after the Pentagon had been hit.
Okay. So it was after the Pentagon was hit would be the first time that you were thinking that American 11 may have hit the Trade Center.
Well, it was confirmed.
Okay.
And
is it fair to say that prior to that, though, you didn't think that American 11 had been the aircraft that hit the first one?
yes, that's correct.
Prior to hearing the confirmation?
Yeah.
At some point after the
I
Pentagon?
never.
Okay.
And you want to know, just the thing, at that time, now I can say it, I couldn't even believe that a commercial airliner could have actually hit into one of the towers. I wouldn't have even believed it.
Even if told, you're saying?
Well, no, after I was told, yes. I mean, now that we know everything, at the time, no. I would never, until I actually witnessed the United descending down into it. And then then I started to believe that it could happen. And it did.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now. You would not have, prior to seeing United 175 descend down into the towers, you would never have fathomed that such an event would occur.
That's right.
Okay. Let's go to the 175.
Do you understand what I'm talking about? That as far as even in my mind, I just could not even fathom. It was so far beyond belief that could happen. It never even occurred to me that was American 11 that actually went into the Trade Center.
Sure, I understand what you're saying. Now, let's look at 175 if we can.
Sure.
And again, I know it's hard to separate because you sort of had both of these planes on your scope at the same time, and both of them obviously were, determined to be hijacked at some point. Let's focus on the 175 now. you asked the 175 at around 8:51 to recycle its transponder code, and it doesn't.
Right.
You've tried already numerous times to raise 175 on the radio, and you get no response. You've tried numerous other ways to contact 175, correct?
Yes.
You go back to the previous sector, right? You also tried other ways to raise 175, but you don't hear from them, right?
That's right.
At what point in time do you say to yourself, I think there's something really wrong with 175?
When I called Sector 10, I was pretty sure that something was wrong. I don't remember exactly when I turned and said it to the chief, but I think I said it after I couldn't raise him any longer. I just turned and said, I think I lost United 175. And that's in here I call, it's when I call Sector 10.
It's around 8:53, we talked about your earlier comment to Sector 10 where you say we have some problems over here right now, we may have a hijack.
Right.
You're thinking 175 we may have.
Yes, I am.
Okay, fair enough. Tell us what is your mindset then going forward from that point in time when you first are thinking at 8:53, we may have a hijack at 175. What do you do then?
Like I said, I turned and told the facility chief. I said, I think I just lost United 175. I told them. But I did not know that was actually United 175. I did not see the two code changes because they weren't responding and the airplane was climbing. I really didn't know whether that was United 175 or another airplane.
So when you look for United 175 in that area of 8:51 when you're trying to raise them on the radio, are you looking at a coast track for 175? Is that right?
Well, no, I'm looking for the actual target of United 175. The only target was that other airplane that was climbing, and it was climbing at a fairly good clip. Normally, these airplanes don't climb like that.
And that other target was the squawking code 3321, right?
Yes.
And you separate from that on the radar screen, the 3321.
That's why I asked Sector 10. I said, "Do you happen to see this other target?" And then I pointed out this one, because at the time I did not realize. I had no idea if that was United 175 or maybe another airplane.
Well, let's stay on that. Let me ask you a question about that. You have this 3321 code that's squawking, right?
Right.
And does that give you an altitude because it's squawking?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
And it was climbing higher than the altitude that the United 175 was assigned.
Okay, so it was climbing higher than the assigned altitude of 175.
And beginning to make a turn.
And does it give you the 3321 code? Is there any identity of aircraft in it?
No.
Okay, so it doesn't say UAL 175. It doesn't say anything about an airline, an identity of a particular airline aircraft call number.
That's correct.
There's no call sign.
Nothing.
At the same time, do you see a call sign for United Airlines 175 somewhere on your screen?
Yes.
Separate from
That
the
target
3321 target?
Yes.
Okay. What does that look like, the United Airlines 175 call
It's just kind of moving on the scope, or it could have been stationary by that time. I really don't recall what it was.
Was it a coast track, though?
Yes, it was in a coast track.
And the data that you get, if any, on coast track, again, is, are you getting any?
Nothing.
You mean, what does it look like? It's the regular full data block.
Yeah, I want to know if you can recall,
It's-
Dave, what does it show
it's just,
in that block?
It can still show, it'll show United 175. It can be X'd out for the altitudes. It'll show the altitude that he was assigned, let's say 31, but the next block will show what the actual true altitude is. That usually now gets locked out because it's no longer acquired on a target where you can get an altitude from. It'll still show the computer number, but in the right-hand thing it should say coast, which is CST, I believe it is. But it was still flashing to Sector 10.
Okay, because you were going to hand them off to 10.
Right.
So when you look at that screen at that point, do you think you have two different aircraft there?
I did not know.
Okay.
And you're asking me, I was not sure what was going on. That's why I asked if Sector 10 might have seen the airplane, seen the target. Sometimes, even in our system, they can stop tracking for a little bit, and then it'll reacquire on the target. We lose targets sometimes. I don't know if you recall, a while ago, when the President's airplane, we actually lost the target for about 30 seconds. And what can happen is there can be a glitch in the radar. Little glitches can happen. You can actually lose the target for a period of time. And then what will happen is all of a sudden the target will pop up over here, and the target will now reacquire with it. So I was asking them, do you happen to see a target around? Maybe I'm missing something. I'm not perfect. I'm sitting there by myself. I said, do you happen to see this target around anywhere? That's why I asked him, and then I pointed out the other target, because at the time I did not know whether that was United 175 or not. I felt it was, but it was not assumed. Do you understand that?
Inkling that it might have been.
Later on, I got it reacquired that it was the United.
But at that point, before it was reacquired, you thought it might have been, but weren't sure.
That's right.
What factors then, at that point, when you didn't know if it was 175 for sure, what were you basing your statement on that we think we may have a hijack? What factors led you to believe that you may have a hijack?
Just how the American was hijacked. The World Trade Center's now been hit by an airplane. That's on fire. Just as I was the only one that was getting all this information at once. I'm hearing the chief upstairs telling we might have numerous things going on. It just made sense. Okay? Not anything to do with anything that was being said. As everything came in, you know how like all the pieces start to come in. As they all came into me, that's the only thing that made sense to me.
Okay. And then what action, if any, did you take then when you thought that you may have another hijack?
I said, like I told them, I lost United 175, didn't know whether it was a hijack or not. I just felt that it was. But there was no indication either way. It's just that this airplane was now climbing. Now it was beginning descent, and it climbed again. I didn't know what was going on in the cockpit. Nobody was talking to us. And the other thing that came out that I didn't realize that in Boston Center, one of the things that was said was that apparently when they were getting the transmissions, they said we had more aircraft. That was never passed on to us.
You never heard?
Not to us, not to me anyway.
Not to you as a controller. You never heard that Boston at some point verified the statement from the cockpit of American 11, we have some planes.
Right.
That was never passed on.
That came up, I guess that I heard that in the interview.
In the interview with Brokaw?
Yeah.
That's the first time you heard it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Dave. I think you said a few moments ago that at some point, though, strike that. Let me go back to, you say when you first see the 3321 code, you think it may be United 175, but you're not sure.
Right.
Does that then later change after that? Do you then
Yes.
tell us about that?
As this plane is turning towards the city,
You
Delta,
175?
well, the
No,
target,
the 3321.
as it starts turning towards the city, I realized Delta 2437 is going to be in conflict. So I ended up turning him to a 170 heading off of what he was, which was about a 240. It's about a 50-degree turn to the left. I told him about the traffic, and I asked if he could take higher, because at the time I think the traffic had hit an altitude, but it's starting down again, but it looked like he was going to be right at 31, right with this airplane. I climbed into flight level 3. I climbed to 33,000 feet. Now the target traffic appears to be descending. I call the traffic to him, and he calls it in sight. Now the traffic's actually underneath him, so I gave him a hard turn to pass right overhead of the target, and he re-identifies it as a United Colors Boeing 767-200 series, which is what United 175 was.
In fact, I'm trying to just give you a time reference. 857, Delta 2433. Looks like a United 76200 as far as I can tell.
Yeah. So now I turn around and I said, this is United 175.
That's when you made the connect, when
Yes.
he gave you the visual that it was
But,
a 767 United.
Yeah. I said, here's United 175.
So at around 857, you now...
Now I know that is now United 175. I am reasonably sure, I'm about 95% sure that is United 175. There's not going to be too many other 767s up there who came from that one target, and now he's here. So now I'm about 95% sure. If you're going to say 100, I don't know if I'm ever 100% sure, but I call it as United 175.
Sure.
I can inform,
I actually tell Mike, I point to him, I says, this is United 175. Here he is.
And in fact, right after you were alerted to the identity of that aircraft being a United 767, you then are speaking to R9, is it?
Well, yeah, I think. Remember when I told you how when things are going on, you want to make sure you get things done? Well, those things weren't getting done. I'm trying to do it. I don't know if we were flashing the handoffs to the wrong sectors. I climbed somebody to the wrong. Basically, in air traffic control, you have right way for direction of flight and wrong way for direction of flight. On J75 heading southwestbound, the right way for direction of flight is flight level 310 or 350. Now I had an aircraft that was heading down that way at 330. They can have traffic coming up at 33. You're supposed to verbally coordinate traffic. It's right in the book. You verbally coordinate wrong altitude or direction of flight with another, so they understand that that's coming. Even though it's in the data block, I still do that. This time, I really don't have time, and that's why I asked him. I said, just please take everything, because I already have this guy at the wrong altitude, and I give him control or whatever. And I just say, please just take everything for me, because we were flashing handoffs right on the boundary, this and that, and they ended up sending the supervisor around to find out what was going on. So they don't know.
Right.
And when he saw everybody huddled around the scope at 42, which is I was working, he runs back and says, just take everything, don't ask him questions.
So now, it's around 8:57, which is approximately 6 minutes before the South Tower was impacted by United 175, we now know, obviously. But going back to 8:57 on that day, you now have associated the beacon code 3321 to be United 175.
Yes.
And it's given you an altitude, right? Okay, does anybody call at any point the New York TRACON?
It was called, and I don't know who called it. I believe it was Lori called the TRACON. I believe Tony did, or
Lori
Barrett. One of them called the TRACON.
Lori Barrett, or who was it?
It could have been Jimmy Volver. Do you remember who actually called? Because the TRACON was watching it. In our building, people were walking around and hand pointing out the airplane to people. Because, like I said, when things start to happen, everything doesn't go exactly as planned. And that's why everybody helps each other. So they went around and watched this airplane, watched this one is thing. We didn't really know. Now we know it's the United 175 again after the Delta re-identified them. And that's when we almost had a nice collision with the one with Sector 55 at the time, when they were issuing clearances like, do whatever you can or whatever. I wasn't privy to all that information because...
Just take whatever evasive means
Yes.
you need to take to avoid the United target, right? Tell me what happens in those ensuing minutes after you equate the beacon code 3321 with United 175.
Just watched him turn towards the city. He went back down, then he climbed back up again. So at that time, we were hoping that maybe he was just going to land at Kennedy or head up the thing, because he did climb back up again. Then they just started a descent, and this last 10,000 feet, he went down in about 1 minute. I don't know if you picked that up on that thing. I didn't want to watch it yesterday again, but in about 1 minute, he descends about 10,000 feet. And that's when, like I said, we just happened to watch it all occurring. Like the TRACON screen, what's this guy doing? Nobody knew.
Now, you knew he was descending at a rapid rate of speed because you were getting an altitude from the beacon code, right? And you see him descending towards the city, and you think the TRACON's been advised, right?
Yeah.
What happens with that beacon code 3321 on your screen? How long does it remain on your screen?
So I think he had 2,200 feet, and then it disappeared.
Disappeared at 2,200 feet?
I think it was 2,200.
When it disappeared from your screen, did you assume at that point, one way or another, whether he was continuing to descend?
Yes.
You assumed he was descending?
Like I said, the words in the area was, somebody yelled out, "Oh my God, he's in the ground on the next hit," because he was going down that fast. And then somebody else yelled out, "Oh my God, that's the Trade Center right there."
When you say the statement someone made on the next hit, "Oh my God, I'll be on the ground," you mean on the next radar sweep, on the next readout?
Yeah. That's how fast he was descending.
And how often do you get hit from
It's 5 sweeps a minute, so every 20 seconds. Or 12 seconds, so there's 12
every
seconds.
12 seconds?
I don't know if you watched it right to the very end. If you watch the altitude, he's descending at a very rapid pace. The last, 5 hits, he goes from 10,000. And what you can do is you take whatever it is, the altitude that changes, multiply times 5, and that gives you his rate of descent. And he was almost doing 2,000 feet each hit.
Before you heard that anybody may have seen the second impact on television, did you assume when he went off the screen that he was headed for the Trade Center?
Right then, yes. That was just, yeah.
And was that confirmed for you afterwards by somebody?
Oh, yeah.
Immediately, or what was the time?
No, not immediately. We were just all kind of in shock watching this. And I turned over, I think, a Southwest that asked her directly. I said no. And we were just all kind of sitting in shock. And then I don't know who came in and said the airplane just hit the Trade Center because they were watching on TV outside.
Could it have been maybe Kevin Delaney? Do you remember?
No.
You don't remember? Okay. Somebody came in and was out in the cafeteria watching TV and said the United just hit the
Well, he said a second airplane just hit the Trade Center.
And you equated that immediately
right away.
75. Let me ask you this then. What happened after that? The United 175 hit the South Tower. What happened to your Sector 42? Was it closed down?
All I remember is, we stopped taking traffic. Tony was sitting on my age, and I forget at what particular time he signed in. There's a lot of stuff was going on. He might have even made the point outs, because I remember asking him, I said, "Is everybody watching the United?" And he goes, "Oh." He's over calling everybody at the time. And then he might have even asked another thing, "Could you point this out to the TRACON?" Because we might not have had lines to the TRACON. The high altitude sectors, I don't know if 42 has a line actually to TRACON. But also, I think the supervisor, was telling them, make sure the TRACON's watching this and that. Everybody was kind of working. Now that everybody knew that something bad was going on, everybody was trying to work together to ensure that everybody was watching this airplane. Not that it made any difference, but...
Prior to 175 hitting the Trade Center, do you know whether it was declared a hijack here by...
I don't know.
Okay.
I do not know.
Okay. You thought you had one, though, and you reported, did you report to one of your either area supervisors or to Mike McCormick that you thought 175 may be a hijack?
No. The only thing I don't know if I actually used the word hijack to them. I just said I think I just lost United 175. Lost them, meaning it could have been a hijack. I didn't know what had happened. I was thinking I think I might have said hijack to them. You're asking me to recall, I was verbalizing a lot. I can remember certain things being said to me, but what exactly I said, I can't remember that. What my exact phraseology or terminology was, but I might have said hijack. I really don't recall.
If somebody had declared 175 a hijack here at the New York Center, are you familiar with any procedures that would be in existence to try and enlist military assistance?
No. As far as from my point of view, the only thing I do is I report it. What they do with the information after that, I couldn't even tell you. I don't know who they call, what they do. It's like certain things. We do certain things when we have to, like when we get an ELT, you report it to the supervisor. What they do with it from there on is usually they bring it up to the front, and then the front makes a determination, meaning like the TMU unit.
So if you think on your watch that you have a hijack, if I understand you correctly, your responsibility would be reported to a superior,
Yeah.
and the superior has the duty or the responsibility to make whatever contact necessary.
Yeah, because I really can't do anything. I'm working a position. The only thing I can do is You relay it up through the chain of command, I guess.
Do you know, David, with regard to United 175, do you know if any military assistance was ever requested? And when I say do you know, I mean not only then, but even as you sit here today.
I thought so. I'm pretty sure when you talk to some of these other people that they were really screaming at the military to get here as soon as possible.
With regard to United 175?
Yes.
Okay. What about with regard
I think some of them up front were under the assumption it was the American that went in after the United disappeared. I think some of them up in the TMU unit had been, as they were watching my scope and things like this, because they knew things were happening, I think they were under the assumption it was the American that went in initially.
that went into the first tower?
Yeah.
After they saw the United hit the second tower, you're saying then they...
No, that's not what I do.
I think prior to that, I think they were assuming it was the American that got a few of the guys up there. Now, that might have been...
They went into the second tower.
Now, that might have
That
been
went into the
hindsight.
second tower, you're saying?
No, the first tower, though.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, and that could have also been after they got all information and everything like that, to say, yeah, I knew it well. I didn't know it was, but I wasn't getting everything. I was only getting what information I was getting from the airplanes, the targets, hearing the trade tower was on fire, and hearing what Mike said. I was still assuming it was a smaller airplane.
In fact, you say Mike was next to you when he was mentioning something about a small aircraft from Poughkeepsie that may have hit the first
Yes.
tower. So when you say the people up front, then you're talking about people other than Mike who thought maybe American 11 hit the first tower?
Yeah, I think the people, a couple of people might have in the traffic management unit.
Do you know who those people would be?
No, not particularly.
Dave LeCate's one of them?
No, he was actually in the area.
In your area?
Yeah. Somebody said to me,
How about Bruce Barrett? Do you remember?
I didn't even talk to Bruce,
Okay.
to be honest. And I'm very friendly with Bruce.
Okay.
I don't know if they thought it was the American. A couple of the other guys said, oh, we thought it was when the target disappeared, but I don't even know if they were sure at the time, because I sure wasn't.
Well, do you think then that there was at least some confusion
There was a lot of confusion going
as to
on.
what hit the first tower
Yes.
after?
I think there was a lot of confusion to that.
So was it fair to say that you think some may have thought it was still a small aircraft
Yes,
after the United 175 even impacted, that some may have still thought it was a small aircraft?
I sure did.
And some may have thought it was American 11?
Yeah.
Okay. And you also think that a military assistance was requested by somebody in New York Senate with regard to the United 175?
All I remember is Vanna was telling me that when she was up in the TMU unit reporting all this, that somebody was yelling for the military to get down there ASAP from the United 175 as it disappeared. I remember hearing that there was a lot of vocalization going on in the traffic management unit.
Now, you did...
See, I'm only listening to what I heard, like, behind me, like, what people were saying. And that might have even been said afterwards, because sometimes it all starts to run together. Do you know what I'm talking about? What I'm telling you I actually heard was when Mike said it to me, I was really sitting in the sector, but some of the other stuff has filtered into me, and it's hard for me to differentiate whether it was being said to me right at the time when this was happening or afterwards when we were talking about it, because it all happened within, an hour or two. It starts to run together, some of the stuff. I can remember vividly some of the things that were being said. Other ones, I'm not sure exactly when it was said, whether it was at the sector or maybe it was upstairs when we were giving our statements, because you heard these statements being given. Everybody else was giving stuff. So I might have picked up stuff from there and just put it all together, because I can't tell you exactly when the timeline was when I heard that.
Let's look at some of the factors with the United 175 prior to the crash. At some point, you realize that he's not contacting you on the radio, he's not responding to you, right? And then you, at some point, associate this new beacon code, 3321, to be United 175,
Yes.
correct? And that's when you get the visual from the other aircraft that it's a 767 United.
Yeah.
In the area of that 3321 beacon code. So now you've got a change of a transponder code and a NORDO situation with this aircraft, right? And now let's add the third factor, that it's deviated from its course significantly. Is that fair to say?
Oh, significantly.
Are those three factors together, given the mindset of your training and experience as it existed on September 11th, were those three factors enough in your mind to declare this hijack, or for you to take the position to your superiors that, hey, this looks like a real hijack?
That's what I did. Only, I probably would not have, except the American had already been hijacked. One airplane's already hit the Trade Center, and now this one. And that was the mind, because we had an incident where we had a 767 lose all power. They couldn't talk on the radio. Do you remember when that occurred and the guy made the emergency landing at Kennedy?
No, I'm not sure.
And this happened a few years ago and it's with 767s. Apparently when they lose all their power, they lose something. They don't have much time to get the airplane down on the ground. And I don't think the guy could really even verbalize much, because that little bit of power was enough to drain the batteries. I don't know if they've corrected that, but we had an incident like that happen. I don't know if John Hoffman was involved. Maybe it was Joe George. It was that long ago. And do you remember it now?
So, Dave, let me just see if I can follow up on your answer here then.
But they didn't even have a transponder at the time.
You're referring to this other incident.
Yes. This one had the transponder on.
So you can see altitude.
Yes.
Okay, let's stick with this for a minute here, this area. So I say there were three factors at some point before impact, namely, one, that the United Airlines 175 was NORDO, no radio contact. Two, there's a transponder code change, and three, is significant course deviation. You have very correctly pointed out that at that time you had also heard that American 11 was reported as hijacked by Boston, so that's a fourth factor. And number five, that some type of plane, be it small aircraft or otherwise, had hit the First World Trade Center.
Yes.
And that there's a major fire there. If you can, and I don't know if you can try and go back in time and separate this, but if you had not heard, and this is hard to do, but if you had not heard that American Airlines 11 was hijacked, and if you had not heard that any plane hit the First World Trade Center, in other words, if we could take those incidents out and assume that they didn't occur, that it was a single hijack episode, or that there was a single episode being 175, do you think that at that point you would have been thinking hijack on 175?
No, I would not have.
What would you have been thinking? Mechanical failure?
I would think some type of mechanical failure. The pilot can't talk to us. He did change the code, so maybe implying that there is something wrong. Maybe they tried to put in, 7700 or one of the codes that tells us that they have an emergency, but he's too busy up there. He did switch it and then couldn't get it in and right, and is now trying to just get there. Maybe that's why the airplane's climbing and descending, because he's losing some type of hydraulic. Who knows?
Okay. Let me ask you this then.
And it does look like he's heading towards the city.
So absent the initial hijack report of American Airlines 11 and absent the World Trade Center being on fire, you may have thought that United 175 had a serious mechanical failure, but you might not. Hijacking would not have necessarily entered your mind.
Probably would not have entered my mind.
Okay. But obviously, what happened on that day is we did have the report of American 11.
Well, everything was just coming in through me. I'm listening to Mike. Everything, as it was just coming into me, it's just like a computer. It filters all the data and then comes out with a conclusion. That was my conclusion.
Okay, fair enough. And we've determined, or we've learned, that you being controllers in general undergo training each year on the dynamic simulation training.
Yes.
And that those training exercises involve simulation of hijack scenarios, correct?
Yes.
Prior to 9/11, did you undergo similar training?
Yes.
And were you presented with hijacking scenarios that you had?
No, what we usually are is if you get a hijack code come up, there's certain things you do, and the pilots are supposed to put the hijack code in.
That's 7,500, right?
Right. And then when you see the hijack, there's certain things you can say to them or whatever. If the pilot's still in control of the airplane, hopefully he'll talk to you. But the hijack code, they have certain procedures which didn't work. But somebody did mention to me, and this might be something that you might want to look into. I don't know how true it is, but apparently years ago the hijack code was a different code than the 7700 or 7500, and they thought it was in the 30s.
Oh, the code was in the 30s. Not in the
This is something, yes, one of the real old timers. Have you ever heard that? I've heard one of the real old timers say that this. I don't know how old the pilot was on United 175, but if these guys were knowledgeable, he may have been trying to get it switched to the old hijack code to let us know. And if there's old timers around, they may have picked it up. I don't know if that's true, but I have heard a few of the old timers say that it was in the 30s was the old hijack code.
So your training exercises, though you say, were pretty straightforward ones, where the pilot would squawk code 7500 and hijack would in fact flash on your radar screen,
Yes.
right? Were you ever presented in your exercises with anything more challenging than that, where you had to sort of play detective and figure out whether it was hijack
No.
without that code? You don't recall that. Were you ever presented with a multiple hijack scenario in any of your training? More than one hijack going on in your sector at the same time?
Tell them what the training is.
No.
The training is basically
But bottom line, the training, this is,
the training
it's
is
going to be open and fresh.
that you see hijack flashing up on the scope because it really comes up. There's three things that can come up. Actually, four that can come up. One I won't. You really shouldn't put in there because it gets to be common knowledge.
Oh, you mean
One
you
is-
think it's something sensitive?
Yeah.
Well, we'll mark that right now in the recording, and we'll note it.
I don't know if it's a thing, but
potentially
it's a
flash.
suspect code. Like when the DEA puts an actual transponder on an airplane that they suspicion is doing drugs, it comes up as suspect. That could be anything, but somebody gets something on there and it comes up with a suspect code.
Okay, so this will be marked for recording.
And it actually
flash.
highlights as being suspect.
Okay.
Then you have the hijack code, you have the emergency code. All these highlight, they actually flash.
7700 would flash for emergency?
Yes, and then you have radio failure.
7600 a day?
Right.
Okay.
And the pilots are supposed to do certain things. But like I said, in a real emergency, the pilot has responsibility for his aircraft and his people that are on board. If he deems it necessary that he can't talk to us and he has to descend that airplane or whatever, that's what he's going to do.
So if I understand correctly, and I don't want to misstate it, it sounds like you're saying that the exercises presented to you were not very creative. Is that fair to say?
No, they're not creative at all.
And is it,
Is
is it fair to say that you also said something just now too, though, that they all seem to be based on, and I don't want to misstate it, so you tell me if you agree or if I'm using the wrong words. Are they all the exercises based on the pilot maintaining control of his aircraft? In other words, no.
Well, being able to do what he's supposed to do. You know, just like we have certain responsibilities they do. And we haven't had a hijack in so long, it's just...
Well, that's what I was getting at, is our responsibilities. The training, when you break down, forget about the suspect, radio failure, emergency code, it is, you see a 7500 code, you ask the pilot, verify score from 7500.
So
That's step one. Step two is tell your suit. We're done. That's
So,
the
none of these, as a controller, you've done this.
Yes.
And so none of these, none of,
suit.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You know, and then the only other thing could be if, depending what his answer is, you know, how that sounds, and then there is another way in verbal communication that he can alert us to a hijack.
So is it fair to say then that prior to 9/11, none of the simulated exercises contemplated a hijacker actually physically taking control of the cockpit and getting rid of the
And
Americans?
not squawking 7500?
Right.
No.
Okay. That's fair enough. And how about, did you ever, prior to 9/11, Dave, did you ever participate in any joint exercises with the military? And what I mean by joint exercises more specifically, an exercise where the military was called in, say, to escort or identify a hijacked aircraft?
No.
So
Not in my experience. I've never seen it. I'm sure it was done, like that one that went to Atlantic City, but I have never seen the military come in. I've never seen it.
I don't mean, well, I'm talking not only real
I've
life.
never been involved in it.
So let's clarify for the record. You've never been involved in a real life scenario where you had to coordinate with the military fighter pilot to vector him towards a reported hijacked aircraft.
Correct.
Did you ever participate in a simulation of that scenario?
No.
In an exercise or drill? with the military?
I have spoken, because I worked Oceanic at one particular time. I probably had more experience dealing with the military than most of the people in my area. But never anything like this. I mean, you do talk to them because we work with the warning areas. We would work military aircraft, it's like this, but never anything to do with vectoring a man or anything like that. Usually either Huntress did it or whoever, what's the one down in Virginia?
Giant killer?
Giant Killer deals with the warning areas. So you would just bring them out safely to the warning area, turn them over to Giant Killer, and then when Giant Killer brought them back out, it either came out VFR sometimes, or into McGuire or Atlantic City or whatever they were doing. And their exercise would be done. I mean, they're fighter pilots. They have a lot better equipment on board. Well, I mean, their equipment's very good. I mean, they can pretty much zing and red on a target. They even buzz targets sometimes that we're working.
Were you familiar with who NIAS is on 9/11? Like, did you know who NIAS was?
No.
Okay.
He's using an acronym on it.
Northeast Air Defense Sector?
Oh, yes.
Oh, you knew who they were?
I've heard the name, but what did they do? No. I figured they helped protect us.
You knew they existed,
Yes.
but you didn't know exactly what their role was.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you know they are also Huntress? That is who Huntress is.
No, I mean, I talk to Huntress all the time. I have in the past, Huntress. You hear Huntress ID when I was in the ocean, you would just, talk to them and stuff like that.
Hypothetically, if you thought you needed to contact Northeast Air Defense Sector in an emergency, would you even have known it? Like, was there a number that you were aware of if you had to contact them from your...
I would probably call it just Huntress.
Okay. What about NORAD? Had you ever heard of NORAD?
Yes.
And if you had to contact them in an emergency, would you
I have
have
no
known
idea.
on 9/11? No idea. Okay. And on 9/11, I think we probably covered this. And if you were, how would you as a controller have detected a hijacking situation on as it existed, say, on 9/11 prior to the events that unfolded that day?
Like we said, you would see the hijack code or something like that, but
it involves some communication coming to you from the aircraft. Is that fair to say?
yes. Like one of the things they can say is this is American Trip 111. Trip meaning that they were hijacked. They don't have to actually squawk 7500. They can actually say American Trip 111 or whatever it is, United Trip 175, and the trip meaning, and then you would respond back with United Trip 175, Roger. And then you would assume at that point that they are hijacking, and you would take no action to bother them. Our job is not to continuously call them, not to try to verify anything. Are you hijacked? We do none of that. Once he says that he is a hijack, you basically do whatever he wants. And if he just starts descending the airplane, that's what the guy behind him's telling him to do. But I don't know if we've ever had a case where somebody else piloted the airplane.
Were you, prior to 9/11, if the pilot didn't tell you in a code word like trip, and that's classified potentially for this interview, but if he didn't tell you with a code word like trip or squawk 7500, was your training then not to declare it a hijack unless you got some signal from the pilot?
Yeah.
I guess, lastly, it had, obviously, the events of 9/11 were startling to a number of people. But let me ask you this. Had you ever even heard anywhere about such a scenario even being potential? When I say such a scenario, I mean somebody commandeering a commercial aircraft to use it as a weapon of mass destruction. Had you ever heard any of your colleagues talk about that scenario or anybody?
I would never have assumed it. To me, it was unfathomable. But you know what it is? Our mindset here is on human life. We consider the individual, like, I find it very difficult when people light themselves on fire or things like this, because in America you look at human life as being the most important thing. And I think their mindset is a little bit different. They don't look at they don't look at human life, nor their own lives. They're willing to sacrifice their own lives to do. But we've had that in the past. It's just to bring it up. as a thing, when you look at the military, and I like World War II a lot, and you look at the Doolittle raid, it actually decimated. Even though it did very little damage to Japan, it devastated Japan because they had never been attacked. It actually pulled all their troops back in to protect the homeland. That was a suicide mission. They basically took that and realized they weren't going to make it. And thank God, I think we only lost a few pilots in that whole thing. The Chinese did a great job. So we've had suicide missions, but never we've done a non-military target. This was like, in the past they've always gone against military targets. This was the first non-military target, I think, that they ever attacked for us. And to us, we've never seen anything like this. Still to this day, it's still devastating to me, and it still boggles my mind.
Dave, let me ask you if after the second impact, at some point, I guess, was your sector closed down?
At the time, right away, the supervisor was saying, shut off Boston, shut off all departures. That was before we declared ATC 0. Our supervisor in the area actually made that, said, shut off everything. Just tell them we're taking nothing.
And then subsequently, New York went air traffic 0, right?
Yes.
And then, I guess that means you're shutting down the airspace, right?
Yes.
And then, do you remember then, at some point, either before or after that, being at a meeting with, not a meeting, a gathering with other colleagues and Marty Fournier, where everybody sort of got together in a room and talked?
Yes.
When you were in that room talking about what had occurred, were you guys also discussing, like, factually what happened? Like, geez, how did we get here? Just going over the events.
I think everybody was in shock. I think we were just talking. We were just talking about what happened, and everybody kind of stumbled. I don't remember how I got home that day. I know I got in my car and left, and I was home.
Do you remember what the purpose of that meeting was? Did anybody tell you why?
It was just try to get our statements as it was still fresh in our minds. And we just gave verbal statements on tape.
Verbal statements as to what occurred on your watch that day with the planes?
Yeah.
With 175 and American 11? Okay.
That's what I recall. I don't recall us really sitting around discussing. I think everybody was just in shock.
But you recall that, especially to recall, some effort was made to try to quickly get some sort of verbal statement from everybody as to what they could remember before they went home.
Yeah.
Dave, let me ask you lastly, for me, and then I'll see if Miles has any questions for you. Lastly, if you were a commissioner and sitting in the shoes of one of the 10 commissioners, and at the end of this exercise, they're going to report to Congress and the White House, and they're going to make certain recommendations. As those recommendations would affect aviation issues, if you were a commissioner, what suggestions would you make to Congress and the White House as to how potentially to make the aviation system even safer or better than what it is today? And I want you to consider everything, including equipment, technology that you think might be out there that would help you as controllers that is available that you don't have here, as well as procedures that you would suggest changing or implementing.
I think there's a couple of things. One, I believe in Boston Center they can pull the tapes almost immediately. We don't have that ability. It takes us quite a long time to be able to pull a tape. Don't they have that ability up there to get?
Well, with part of CRUX, we'll be able to do that. Actually, the voice might not be there, but we'll be able to replay it quickly. You're talking about the voice tape of the...
Yeah, because they pulled the voice tape pretty quickly that we listened to it right at the supervisor's desk. We're not allowed, we can't do that. And I would think it'd be nice that, because, sometimes you miss things. Like, I miss things. If I didn't re-listen to the tape, I would have never heard the one pilot asked me if the 767 was still flying, because I didn't hear it. I had something else I had to do. Even though he said it, I missed that. And somebody else told me about it, and I just missed it. It was probably up there, because I did hear it, but I didn't acknowledge it. And it's just something I didn't even look at. And one other thing that would be an interesting thing to do is have something on the airlines that if they do happen to get hijacked, that they don't have to do anything physically. It would come up, like maybe they have to punch in a code, do something, every time they sit in. So if they get removed from the seat or whatever, it comes up that something else comes up on that code. I just think that's you have it as you know how your car alarms have passive restraint, passive alarms, and the ones that are passive are actually better because as soon as you close that door, they arm.
When you go off break and come back on, you're logged in electronically, aren't you? We know it's you and nobody else that's sitting at your controller position.
Right.
Is that the similar type of thing you're
I would think so, yeah. Even if they get up out of the seat, there's got to be something in that seat that should say that somebody got out of that seat. When somebody else sits down, they should have to log back in. And if they don't, then something should get triggered and say, what's going on here? Maybe you could transmit to them, and then you know something's wrong.
Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Dave, just on that meeting that you had with the other controllers immediately after the verbalize, what you could recall, you wouldn't have any problem if we wanted to listen to such a tape and see what you guys think.
No.
Okay.
Dave, I need to take you back a little bit on 175, if you don't mind, on the center chart to your right up there.
Yeah.
Which you're probably the one guy that can help us a little bit. Just looking at that.
So.
Just looking at the flight path of 175 on its southwest leg.
Yes.
There's a knee. There's a little turn to the right there. And we're trying to sort that out a little bit.
Explain to me the turn to the right that you're talking about.
This one, right here, as he's proceeding southbound.
That's J80.
Right, he's coming back onto J80.
Well, he is actually flying J80. That is actual J80 right there.
Before you got him,
They may have given him directs.
Boston here, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Let me play back a little bit for you to inform you. American Air 11 and 175.
Cross. I know that.
And the controller in 20, I think, up in Boston, turns 175 to the right, precautionary, to make sure he is clear of American 11 because they don't know the altitude, as you didn't hear. And he puts him off this direction and then turns him back.
Direct to Sparta.
Right.
That's in our letter of agreement that they can go direct to Sparta.
That the pilot himself can go direct to Sparta without any. When you inherit him, you don't have to tell him anything.
No.
What the analytic problem we have, this is at about the same time that the ELC transmission is heard. This is at about the same time as the code changes.
Okay.
All of that's happening in this time frame, and the analytic question we have is this turn back onto the airway.
Probably just done by the autopilot.
And could you explain that a little bit, how the autopilot would do that? It doesn't take the pilot to do that, is that what you're telling me?
Now, once they program in the coordinates, and let's say you give them direct to a fix, like on their route of flight, like Sparta is on J80.
Right.
He turns them and says, resume on navigation, direct Sparta, and the rest of the route is unchanged. So now he puts in the data block, and not only because I've flown up there that I know this. They enter Sparta as a waypoint. They enter it as long as it's on the route of flight. As it hits Sparta, it re-picks up the flight route that it's supposed to go on, and it flew J80.
And the plane itself flew J80.
As far as I would know, usually in those 767s, the pilots don't do very much as far as flying it until they land and take off. They basically set the autopilot. They do all this prior to it. They know all the things that are going on.
So when the pilot is up here and he is deviated and then turned back, he's turned back to direct Sparta. He puts that into the automatic pilot, and then the autopilot will make this turn.
Yes.
Irregardless of who's in the cockpit.
As long as they haven't disengaged the autopilot as of yet.
And up to this point, you would consider that the direct Sparta route?
Sure.
I don't want it the right turn.
J80.
He's going back on course.
Yeah, here's J80. You can see it right here. J80 runs between Sparta, East Texas. This is all, you see J60 and J80. Sometimes they run same airways. Very interesting the way they do this sometimes. It's just like roads. You're on them, they'll have the same road. They come down, this is both J80 and J60 down here. When he turns on here, he's flying J80. J80 hits East Texas, maintains on this, and then heads out this way. Okay? A lot of times we'll give them direct, like over to Larry, so they could be off the route. It just saves them a minute. That's a lot of fuel if you consider 100 airplanes a day, saving 1 minute of flying time. So once he made the turn, he looked like he was just flying J80.
So he's on course. He doesn't go off course.
He doesn't actually go. That's why even in this area here, I'm not really concerned. He's still on course.
This to you on the scope is absolutely normal. But
Yeah.
regardless of who's in the cockpit or what the status of the takeover is, the plane's on autopilot and it's going to make that turn.
If it's a Slant Alpha, which is non-autopilot, the 767s have tremendous. All the newer airplanes have just tremendous stuff on them. They'll fly these routes perfect. The ones that won't fly the routes good are, let's say, a Slant Alpha, where they're manually tuning in these radials. These are all radials. Here's like the 249 over here. These are all radials that they fly to stay on the airways.
But that's not the case with the 767.
No, this guy was right on the course, and it was like just flying right down J80. So nothing was really, until he actually started to climb in here, that I became worried. And then once he started making the turn, I don't know at what particular time I was trying to talk to him in here. Was it prior to him?
The recycle, I think, came right at about the time he turns is when you ask him to recycle. It's within seconds one way or the other, I think.
Yeah, so I'm still looking at it. This did not look anything. And the other thing is,